our guest tonight is WWE Hall of Famer and Access TV play-by-play man, Jim Ross. How you doing?
I'm good. Good. Thanks for having me on.
No problem. Listen, I mentioned your new job as the play-by-play man for New Japan Pro Wrestling on Access TV. What went into your decision to jump back into the wrestling business, and why do you feel now is the right time to join another commentary team?
Well, I never retired from doing wrestling play-by-play. I just never found a place that was overly comfortable in hanging my hat. So I'd kind of written that off and moved on to other things, which has been a blessing as well. So the issue, I never really retired from doing wrestling. It's just the right opportunity that I felt most comfortable with hadn't come along until in November we started talking to Access about doing the Friday night New Japan show. And because I had done Wrestle Kingdom 9 and I've been watching a lot of New Japan wrestling, I felt like that my style hopefully will pair up favorably with their in-ring presentation. So, and the travel was very conducive. I had no desire to get back into weekly travel. I tapped on that deal, and but going to LA 8 or 10 times a year, those can be fun trips. It's a fact we're doing, 3 shows or so a day over a couple of day period. I believe there were 6 shows usually in the can. Really, the travel is very friendly, and I like the fact that Adam Swift and Access TV are very committed to building this brand much, much bigger than it is now on their network.
Mike Yuri?
Well, you've blogged about Lucha Underground before, and I'm not sure how closely you follow that product, but what are your impressions of it in terms of what works and what doesn't? And also, what would be your level of interest in working with them in some capacity if that opportunity ever presented itself?
Well, right now, legally, it would be impossible. So that's a non-issue. Right now, I'm committed and contracted to do American weekly television with Mark Cuban and Access TV. So the possibilities of working with Lucha Underground is probably pretty much next to non-existent right now. I always hate talking about other jobs that people have. Matt Stryker's got that job, and so really the job isn't open. So, but as I enjoy the brand, I enjoy watching their show. It's an entirely different presentation than traditional pro wrestling, without question. I enjoy I think they're like anybody else in the business today. They could probably improve the impact of what they do in the ring if they sold a little bit more and they slowed down maybe a half a step with all their flying stuff. They do so many amazing things, but they do them in such rapid fire that sometimes it's hard to process everything. And you don't want to blow away or blow off something that's really, really good. And they do a lot of things high-flying wise that's very, very good. The only negative I've ever had with Lucha Underground is it's not a deal breaker because I still watch. Is I'm not a fan of the intergender matches, but that's me. And but I'm very pleased that they got a 3rd season, and it's good. A lot of guys I know work there, and it's an alternative brand of wrestling, and it's a unique way to present the product. It's not for everybody. I get that. But I personally enjoy it.
Brandon Gavin?
We appreciate when you give your honest opinion of WWE's product on the Ross Report and in your blog on jrsbarbecue.com. Do you think fans are justified, though, when they critique WWE as harshly as they do, or should they be more forgiving before judging or criticizing WWE's product or any other wrestling product?
I think they should just be encouraged to vent all they want because it's a different day and different time. You can't judge a lot of things that are happening in today's world of pro wrestling by yesterday's rules. The advent of social media, the information flow, A lot of fans have more information about really what goes on than they've ever had at any time in the history of the business. So it doesn't bother me. Sometimes it's frustrating because people seem to pick the strangest hills to die upon. The most, they just get on a point and they belabor the same points over and over and over, which lends me to believe that, of course we don't know because of the mysterious social media genre how old they are. It may be a 10 or 12-year-old kid talking. We don't know. So I really don't. I just tell people, look, don't get really your drawers in a wad over pro wrestling creative. Think about what I just said. Don't get your blood pressure up and let it ruin your day or affect your life because you're unhappy with pro wrestling creative. You'll learn as you get older there are many, many more things to be concerned about than a finish in a pro wrestling match. Enjoy it, embrace it. It's the same thing as wanting to commit suicide if your team doesn't win the Super Bowl. Really? So I don't have a problem with people critiquing things. You're an entertainer. You're in a public eye. You got a thick skin. I was told this a day or two ago that I had no entertainment value and I was boring. And I don't have any idea how the person that told me that. But hey, look, I didn't even block them. They have the right to their opinion. And if they want to share with me that they believe that I'm boring, then have at it.
You're a saint for not blocking that person. I would have blocked. It would have been so fast he would have been blocked. But that's just me, jaded me. Well, listen, we mentioned the Ross Report on Podcast One and how you do talk about the WWE product. From a veteran perspective, how do you think Mauro Ranallo has adapted to WWE thus far? And what are your thoughts on your old friend Jerry Lawler playing more of a heel role now?
Well, I am very happy for Mauro. I think fine. He's got a steady gig with a steady check. And when you're a freelance broadcaster, as he was, and still is to a certain degree, you're always waiting for the phone to ring and the next gig. That's just the nature of the beast for everybody that's in that boat. So now he's got a regular gig. He's got a regular check. I would hope that he's an employee and he gets benefits, so forth and so on, and that's always reassuring in today's economy. But I think it was one of the best hires the WWE's made in a long time. Mauro's very passionate. He's a student of the game. He lives for that work. And so I'm very, very happy for him. And I thought Lawler, I talked to Jerry after or before his first show with Mauro. And we actually talked about if he was going to change or how he was going to tweak it or how because he was not familiar with Mauro's work. He did not know Mauro. Jerry's not a big fan of. I don't know if Jerry's watched a MMA fight or a boxing event in a decade, and I'm being kind. So he was not familiar with Mauro's work, but we did talk to him. I did talk to him about. We chatted about the possibility of him getting a little bit more edgy. And I just told him, I said, well, you're the best at it. You're the best the WWE has at that, along with Paul Heyman. But neither of you are in that role right now. And I said, I don't know why unless the WWE corporately had a issue with you doing it, I think it would freshen things up. And he likes doing it. So I said, and you're good at it. So I think I'd run up the flagpole and see what they said. And that's what he did. And obviously they liked it. And there they are. So it's a good fit. It's a little bit of a step back in the eyes of some people, maybe, the stereotypical things. But I'm not so sure that stereotyping certain good things is a negative. So I'm very happy. I like Jerry and in that role. Mauro's done a terrific job. I think the next thing, order of business with that group, is just to find a definitive role for Byron Saxton. And Byron's a great kid, smart, good look, all the things going for him that the WWE likes. Youth, he's well spoken, good look, and so I think. But I don't know what he does. I don't know what his role is, and I don't mean that in a negative way. He's a really a nice young man, very very polite, very well raised. You want him on your team. I certainly would, but I just don't know what his role is. And until his role is more clearly defined, it's hard to mesh. So, but I enjoy it. It gives me more reason to want to be more motivated to watch SmackDown, to be honest with you. And I may be in the minority because I'm a broadcaster at heart, but I enjoy the sound of the program. I think people sometimes disregard and discount how the soundtrack of a pro wrestling show needs to be on point for everything to come together. It brings everything, it ties everything together. And sometimes not just WWE by any stretch, there's a lot of wrestling shows on television that need work on their announcing fundamentally.
Mike Chiari?
Well, something that we've discussed a lot lately with WrestleMania coming up is the predictability within WWE's booking. I think we all feel like, at least the three of us do, Roman Reigns versus Triple H at WrestleMania, with Reigns coming up on top, is kind of a given at this point. And it may not be a bad story on the surface, but I think the predictability factor is something that could lead to backlash from the fans. So how do you think WWE goes about balancing unpredictability while still being able to tell a good, logical story as it relates to Triple H against Reigns, or really any other feud for that matter?
Well, let me ask you this question. How old are you?
26.
26. So you're in the 18 to 34 demo.
Yes.
If my math is correct. Do you believe that predictability gene that you're talking about is as applicable to the 25 to 54s?
I feel like the older you are as a wrestling fan, the more you could see things coming. Personally, more experience you are as a wrestling fan.
And we've always been able to do that.
Right.
And it's never been a kick in the nads for being predictable, because if you think about any major territory that had a babyface as a star, the babyfaces won probably 99% of every blow-off since I was a little kid watching wrestling.
Right.
So I would say then, when you have the babyface versus the hot heel in the blow-off match, that my money would always be on the babyface, because most promoters like to have the heels get heat and the babyface finally, never quitting, never giving up on the audience, the fans, win in the end. So my point is, in a roundabout way, I have less issues with predictability. I think sometimes, and I've seen it done, where we have to book. This might be predictable. Well, let's throw a curve at them. Let's book something that they're not expecting, even though it may not be the best thing for the big picture, or even though it may be almost next to impossible to execute. Let's do that. And so I'm not a big issue. I don't have big issues on how all that could work out. I booked an angle on my Ross report this week, just for the hell of it, just for fantasy booking, of how Roman Reigns leaves WrestleMania as the champion with a whole bunch of unforeseen things going on that would launch him to the next level. And that would be essentially aligning himself with Vince, who thinks that Triple H is getting too big for his britches, and he's cultivated this hot brand called NXT that's arguably taking away some of the sizzle and some of the attention from Raw and SmackDown. And even though Triple H is in line to run the company someday, it's not today. So McMahon sets up a thing to screw for Reigns very subtly to win the triple threat match, at which he's going to be booed out of the building at with Lesnar and Ambrose in the same match. That doesn't take a sage to figure that one out. And then you get to WrestleMania, and you don't know all this stuff's going on because you don't tape it where you forget the camera's there. It's a secret. Surprise. It's not predictable. And then at WrestleMania, you have Hunter versus Reigns. Reigns has The Rock in his corner to neutralize Vince and all of his henchmen. And without realizing that the biggest henchman of all is his cousin, Roman Reigns. And then you have Triple H with his father-in-law feeling very confident that he's going to leave WrestleMania as the champion. And Camelot continues, and the company he's going to take over someday just had 100,000 people on hand, that type dialogue. But during the match, you have Reigns and Vince work out a finish where they screw Hunter. Reigns goes over. Rock comes in, asks what the hell. Superman punch, spear. Down goes The Rock. Reigns is a champion. He kicks the ass out of the Great One. And Vince comes. Then he's leaving. Vince is preening, and he's looking at his creation when The Rock makes a little bit of a comeback, and you end the show with Vince getting a rock bottom and a people's elbow. But Roman Reigns is Vince's boy, and Roman Reigns is going to be basking off the glow of the corporate plane and Vince's right-hand man, and also he was the guy that put Triple H in his place. There's endless stories you can continue with in there, but you have made yourself a red-hot heel that people enjoy booing would be one way of doing it. And that might not be as predictable as we would think going in, but I'm not concerned about predictability, because are you going to watch WrestleMania?
Absolutely.
Okay, so didn't affect that, right? So me too.
No.
I'm going to watch it. So I think the predictability is a little bit of a topical, timely thing, and that maybe it's much more to do than it is. My opinion.
Right.
That's all.
Well,
my opinion actually isn't any better than yours. It's an opinion. That's all.
In terms of the predictability, though, because I think that when you look back, and obviously you mentioned it, a guy like Hogan, you kind of knew he would go over like Andre, a Savage, a Sergeant Slaughter at WrestleMania, and you can say that about a guy like Cena as well for over the course of most of his career. But do you feel like with social media and the way that fans are able to express their opinions and share their opinions with so many other fans a lot more so than they were back then, do you think that makes trying to keep things less predictable
No.
something that WWE should focus more on, though?
No. I think WWE should focus on doing things right.
Mm-hmm.
I think they should focus on doing things fundamentally sound. I think they should focus on doing things that are logical. I think they should focus on things that are based in reality. And when you find yourself writing in a based in reality atmosphere, then the surprises and the little things that you're talking about and that some people may want more of or become about organically. So, no, I think their biggest focus should be on getting new talents over and doing business right and fundamentally sound and not going out of their way so we can surprise a few people. Not whatsoever. That's just me, again. And I don't expect everybody to agree with me. I'm honest, and that's a little different than you get from a lot of wrestling people.
Agreed. Brandon Gutman?
We recently praised The Miz for his segment with AJ Styles on Raw and mentioned how he would be an excellent addition to the commentary team when he decides to retire from the ring. Is there an active wrestler you think would make a good commentator?
Well, I said, if you listen to my Ross report or read my blogs at my website, you've never heard me knock Miz, but Miz's future is not as a wrestler. Miz's future is as a communicator. I would have Miz watching and following and looking and listening to everything Paul Heyman does. The why he does it, when he does it, how he does it, and I would try to create a mindset that I'm going to be as good in my rendition of this role as Paul Heyman is in his role as the advocate of Brock Lesnar. And then you obviously then would wish Mr. Miz good luck, because trying to top Paul Heyman is going to be a tall order. But my point is that Miz has a viable future as a main event level talker, either as a manager, advocate, color analyst, or whatever. But to be the over-the-top, obligatory, predictable heel segment, don't do it for me. It's too antiquated. That's too predictable because it's the same presentation every week. So Miz could probably be a very good commentator. There's a lot of guys in that roster that are pretty glib. Big Show might be an excellent commentator. He's certainly be the world's largest wrestling broadcaster in history. So, I'm sure that's how it would be used, too. But there are a lot of guys, that are really good. I'm not so sure Daniel Bryan might not be really good because I think he'd add a really unique slant to it. He's a good talker, and you believe what he says. But it's hard for wrestlers to become color broadcasters because they're most proficient in putting over themselves and less proficient in putting over what they see on their monitor, i.e. the other guys. So, but Miz, I think he's got a phenomenal future as a talker. But there are a lot of other guys that are very glib that we don't get to hear talk on TV. So unless you're in catering or in the back, you would never know that they're funny, they're entertaining, they're intuitive. So that's like Byron Saxton mentioned earlier. I don't know if Byron is a fish or fowl. I don't know if he's a heel or babyface. And if he's Geneva, if he's Switzerland and he's neutral, he ain't gonna last long.
Well, do you feel that, to me, Morrow is playing the role of straight play-by-play guy, King is taking the role of heel, and then Byron seems to be just shilling the things that like, he's the one talking about the network, and they're not letting Morrow talk about a lot of that kind of stuff. He shills from time to time, but it's mainly Byron who seems to be the one kind of teasing things and tossing to things. Do you see that as a dichotomy that could work?
Yeah, I don't have a problem with Byron pitching the packages and pitching the break and welcoming them back, as long as when the bell rings, they let Morrow monopolize the dialogue bell to bell. And if all companies would stop the overselling of extemporaneous things and that we're not seeing, and the witty repartee from the announcers, and a lot of wrestling shows is boorish. It doesn't move the needle. It's nothing. It's fill. I really believe that if all wrestling companies would focus more on maintaining what I'm hearing is what I'm seeing, bell to bell, the business would infinitely get much healthier. But we have a trend in American pro wrestling, and I watched a lot of wrestling off there's an app called the Flips app. You guys familiar with the Flips app? FLIPPS.
Yes.
Yes.
It's a hell of a deal, and I'm going to hopefully be doing some work with them. And the only reason I'm a customer, I used it. And so things worked out, but that's another story for another time. But the Flips app, you can watch a lot of really unique events, MMA, boxing, and all kinds of wrestling stuff on your smart TV. Like I got Apple TV. Don't ask me how it works. Don't have a damn clue. But I can tell you that with that Flips app, it's a kick-ass deal, man, because you can watch all kinds of combat sports, arm wrestling, and pro wrestling. They're going to cover the Ring of Honor pay-per-view. I think they cover, when TNA has a pay-per-view, they cover that. I think they do Evolve. They're doing Shimmer this week on Friday night. You can watch it free on Access, but it's on the app outside the United States. I know you guys got lots of folks that sample your stuff outside the American border. So, but my point I was trying to make is I go and look at the Flips app and I hear a lot of broadcasters. I'm cursed. I will listen to the commentary at the expense of watching a damn good wrestling match. And because I'm hearing one thing and I'm seeing another, and somewhere along the way my brain has got to process all these things, and it's challenging. And so sometimes you just give up and say, "What the hell?" It's just now it becomes noise. I hear it, but I'm not listening. So I think that I hear a lot of announcing, and if you just would be clean and pure, bell to bell, I really believe people would increase their interest level and their emotional investments in pro wrestling.
Well, switching gears here a little bit, we talk to wrestlers all the time about their dream matches, but you as a commentator, I want to talk about your dream commentary team. If you could build the perfect commentary team of anybody, living or dead, 3-man, 2-man, how would you build a booth? What would it look like in your eyes?
Oh man, that's so hard to answer because I leave out people that I really, really like, and unlike a lot of guys that on the fantasy matches, I mean I'll give you an example. I did an interview the other day with somebody, and they were telling me that 1989 was a pivotal year for them as far as them becoming a true die-hard wrestling fan. And of course, I'm curious as to why 1989. And they said, well, it was those 3 matches, that trilogy with Flair and Steamboat. And they pointed out to me, which I had never thought of, that I called all 3 of those matches, but I called all 3 of them with 3 different partners. I called the first one Magnum TA in Chicago. Then I called the New Orleans match with Terry Funk, 3-fall match. And I called the title change in Nashville with Bob Caudle. I would go call any match anywhere with any of those 3 guys. Terry Funk may be the most underrated guy I've ever worked with. Bob Caudle was just a phenomenon. He was absolutely one of the great secrets of wrestling. And Magnum TA was just getting his first coffee or two when he was booked with me to do the 1989 match. So, but how would I not want to work with Bobby Heenan? How would I not want to work with the King? And then, just to keep my heart rate up, how would I not want to work with Paul Heyman? So I don't know how you could do all that. It's too many voices to be in the booth at one time or at the table. But I can tell you that if I did work with any of those guys, I'd like to work with them 1 at a time, not 2 at a time. I'm just not a big fan of the 3-man pro wrestling booth. If you did what I suggested and you kept pure with the match, bell to bell, 2's enough. But if you feel compelled to have the witty broadcaster repartee, like you do like we see sometimes on our local news, then you might need 3. But boy, it is a roadblock. It's a cluster. The best 3-man experience I ever had quite frankly, was with Vince and King. We all got along great. We had good timing. We all knew our role, and it was good. And Vince was excellent at keeping the rudder in the water. And then Lawler was even more heelish than he is now. And then I was attempting to be the voice of reason, even though I would, if a babyface didn't make a cover in time, I would call him out, but I was just saying what was obvious or what I thought needed to be said. So I don't have a dream team. And then, I worked with Gordon Soley, my hero. And that was fun toward his latter days. It took us a little bit of vodka to get through the broadcast, but what the hell? We made it. And we called one of the great matches of all time, the I Quit match, that was dotted with Hall of Fame level talent. Arguably one of the best referees ever, and Tommy Young and Terry Funk, who's absolutely a Rembrandt on a different canvas, Flair, and that rarefied air, Gary Hart. Some people think Gary Hart's the best manager ever. He's damn sure in the top 5 or 10 easily. And then I had Gordon Soley doing color. That's a pretty good little group. So it's just hard, you know. It would all depend on the matches, you know, what kind of matches you got. Some guys that I work with are better at calling lighthearted, more comedic things than blood and guts. But boy, I've been really, really lucky to work some good partners, and so I just hate to mention one or two and leave somebody out because I'm not big on hurting people's feelings.
Oh, that's fair. That's fair. You built me a commentary team that looks like we're watching the painting of the Last Supper here. We'll go last round of questions here. Mike Chiari.
Well, you were a big part of NXT, obviously, in its early development, and it's a brand that's grown by leaps and bounds over the past couple of years due to the WWE Network largely. Looking back, did you ever have any inkling that it would become as big as it has? And also, what do you think the future holds for NXT? What's its ceiling?
I think that Paul Levesque and his staff can't give enough credit to William Regal for the scouting and tireless efforts that he endures. And he's really, really good at that. And he's been able to facilitate, as a good sales job, some guys that maybe 3 or 4 years ago you would think they wouldn't even have a chance to have a sandwich in the WWE, much less to get signed and have a chance to make an impact. So, but Paul Levesque's done a phenomenal job, and I think he's kind of looked at it and built it like a little bit like an old school territory, in some ways, as best you can. In other words, when we were first talking about it, and you know, we had done my administration open camps in Louisville and Cincinnati and Memphis. We had a relationship with Rick Bassman out in L.A. Rick did a nice job for us, without question. So we had these, but the key was always, while the schools worked well in Cincy and Louisville and Memphis, was that they ran live events. And if you're in a wrestling camp, that's one great way to learn fundamentals. But at some point, you got to get in front of a paying audience, whether there are 50 of them or 25 of them, or they paid 50 cents or 25 cents. You've got to wrestle and perform in front of a live audience. So I think going on the road with NXT has been phenomenal. It's a bigger deal than people make out of it, and so I like it a lot. Now here's the thing: you got to keep your eye on the indies, and you got to snatch up the best guys in the indies as regularly as you can, because you're not going to hurt anybody's feelings, because they want to come anyway, and they want a chance to make big money and be a part of WrestleMania or whatever. So you got to keep the indies scoured and scouted and signing the right people. They got to be good people, not just good high spot guys or good bumpers, but good athletes that can tell a story, and they're not issues in the locker room. Because some of these guys that you have in the system now are not getting, nobody's getting any younger. So what do you do with Balor? What do you do with Joe? What do you do with all these guys that have been in the indies for years around different promotions, and now they're in their mid to late 30s? They got to fish or cut bait. So who do you replace the shells? Who do you restock the shells with once they're gone? Well, you got to keep recruiting and those indies, and you've got to let Jerry Briscoe go out there and continue to sign some of these amateur studs that you hope you can find. You know, if you sign 5, maybe you get 1. But that's the kind of the odds are there of all of it. If you sign 20 people, if you get 4 or 5 keepers out of 20, you've had a hell of a year. And you know, we've had some incredible years there, because we had one class that had Brock Lesnar, John Cena, Dave Bautista, Randy Orton, and Shelton Benjamin in it. And ironically, the guy's name I mentioned last was probably hands down the best pure athlete of the group. So you can't get lucky like that all the time. We got lucky. We did our due diligence, but you know, we were lucky. We got some breaks. But damn sure we worked hard too, pal. We worked our asses off. I always, you know, hiring The Rock and hiring Austin and hiring Foley, 2 cast-offs nobody wanted. Rock had never had a match. Edge and Christian were indie wrestlers in Ontario, maybe 200 pounds. So you have to use your guts and your instinct. You got to look inside somebody's heart. You got to get to know your talent, and then wish for the best. But they got to keep recruiting. You got to keep making new stars. The biggest challenge the company has in the company-wide, as far as the talent's concerned, is creating new stars on a regular basis. And then you got to have a next level is you got to be able to roll those new brands out of the showroom, and how do you introduce them to the world? Because they get one shot at a first impression, one time. And you can't drop them out of midair, or the audience will crap on them. So they gotta be debuted with some impact and with a plan, with a rollout plan. So I think the future of NXT is exceptionally good. They're a great anchor for the network. To people to, I would buy the WWE network just for NXT, even though I watch other things on it, especially the pay-per-views, the big events. But NXT is worth $9.99 a month to me. So I'm very high on the brand. I'm high on the concept, the system. I think you should always be changing instructors and coaches in and out, guest instructors, because it's always good to hear a different voice or a different philosophy, and I think they're doing that. But they got to keep recruiting. They got to keep getting great young athletes in there, and then they got to. Then when they're ready to be graduated, they got to have a plan. You just can't be drafted into an NFL team off the draft with position unknown. Are you a quarterback or a nose tackle? I got to know what you are. I got to know what we're going to do with this guy. And so that's the whole deal, is getting people to sign off that here's what we're going to do to make this talent special, and give him or her the best chance to help us. And if they can't, we chalk it up to calculated risk. We tell them thank you very much, and the next man or woman up.
Brandon Gavin, final question.
We've recently been watching some pay-per-views from the Attitude Era, and the most consistent highlight so far has been the commentary with you and the King. Was that your favorite time of your career? And is there an event you called that you enjoyed the most?
Oh man, I've been a fan of wrestling since I was first or second grade. So I've always been in love with the product, still am. I think that's why I enjoy doing my one-man show so much, because I get to be surrounded by fans just like me, and they have questions just like I had. And I'm always amazed at what people have on their mind, because if you come to one of my shows, I'm not going to restrict what you can ask. You paid your money. You got in. I appreciate it. I thank you. Ask away. And you just hope that people will use some modicum of civility and not bandying around words that are not, kosher for everybody in the room. So I love the fan thing, man. I just love the being around the fans, and I think that so many big events that I've been a part of. I can tell you that one of the events that I really enjoyed, and I never had any bad times, to be honest with you. Working for Watts was a learning experience. Every day was an adventure, and the product was hardcore long before ECW. I mean, when a booker books a 30-man first blood battle royal around the territory, that means that 29 people got to bleed before there's a winner. So you figure out what hardcore is. And the guys' heads are so scarred up and mangled that by the fourth or fifth night of the tour, they didn't have to take any utensils in the ring to get color. Just hit me, and they would bleed. It was amazing. So everything was an adventure. It was all great learning experiences. Even the bad times weren't that bad. Like somebody said, "What's the best barbecue you ever had?" I said, "Well, the worst barbecue I ever had was pretty damn good." And I think you can use that metaphor on other things, but we shall not at this point in time. I really enjoyed WrestleMania 17. My dad and I used to watch the Houston Oilers on the TV. That was the local ASC team. Actually an AFL team at one time, an ASC team later on. So their home games were in the Astrodome. And it looked like this phenomenal facility that, we just couldn't imagine how you could build a building that big. I remember my dad saying, boy, that damn Astrodome would sure hold a lot of hay. So, bales of hay. That's my dad, farmer, rancher guy. So doing it there was cool. It was the second Rock Austin match. The card was really good. And I worked with Heyman after giving him his break at WCW, and when nobody wanted to work with him. Nobody. And when I told the booking committee, of which I was a member, that I wanted to use him as my regular partner on the broadcast, they almost wanted to have a parade in my honor. They did not. They were so happy that I was taking the young, brash New Yorker out of their hair. And they knew that it was going to be sooner than later there would be an implosion, and I would go crazy. And none of those things happened, and he was a hell of a broadcaster, just like I thought he would be. So we went way back, and now all of a sudden we're doing WrestleMania 17, and the Astrodome is sold out, biggest crowd in the history of the building, I guess that's all the old veterans talk that way, but it's my statement's proven. No event ever had more people at it in the Astrodome than WrestleMania 17. Paul did a hell of a job. That was the night Austin turned heel, where he almost did an audible and nailed Vince and was going to change the story and change history right there, but he just didn't quite pull the trigger. It was an ill-fated angle, but it was. But I don't even look at it at what was a good angle, what was a good match. Just the whole experience was amazing. And all those years, I've gone down to work on Paul Bosch's shows. So I was a veteran of Houston. As a matter of fact, I'm talking to Bruce Tharp, the president of the NWA, about doing a collaborative business venture with him on the Paul Bosch Library. What's the new project I'm working on? Because I really have that's one of the most amazing collections I've ever seen, because Paul worked with NWA guys, AWA guys, independent guys, and we have tapes from the 60s through the mid-80s. Unbelievable. There are some matches on that library that would take up a whole hour of a show. Absolutely amazing. I bet there's 75 NWA title matches. History. You could do you could do a year or more just of that if you wanted to. So I was excited about that. So WrestleMania 17 would be the one, I would say, because at WrestleMania 23 in 2007 was the year that I was inducted into the Hall of Fame. And that was scheduled, which I didn't know at the time, to be my last WrestleMania before I was replaced. But that didn't happen I stayed around another year until I got traded to SmackDown. So 23 is really special because that's Hall of Fame time. I had family, friends there. It was really, really hell of an experience. Steve Stone Cold inducted me. So that whole weekend was really a cool moment for a wrestling fan. And then, of course, now it's kind of topical because WrestleMania 23 was where Donald Trump and Vince had their issue. The guy that may be the next president of the United States, who the hell knows, helped cut Vince McMahon's hair. So that was a memorable one. I liked 25 because I got a cup of coffee and I got a booking with Undertaker and Shawn. I hope I added to that a little bit because it was such an important match for me in my life, my career. That was cool. Benoit beating Triple H and Shawn, a triple threat match in the Garden. Pretty damn cool. A lot of them, but I guess 17 and 23 would be the top two.
A huge thank you to our guest, Jim Ross. Please tell the fans where they can support you and where they can see your one-man shows.
Well, we are doing 3 one-man shows WrestleMania weekend in Dallas. The House of Blues, which is an 8-minute walk to the American Airlines Center, which will the Hall of Fame and Monday Night Raw will be emanating from. We're 8 minutes away, walking right there. It's close, in other words. And we have a show on Saturday at 4:00, just before the Hall of Fame. It'll be over at 6, drop dead 6, and the show at the Hall of Fame I think starts at 7, and it's 8 minutes away. You're good. After the Hall of Fame is over, you'll be needing a drink and to stretch your legs and maybe get something to eat. We're right there waiting on you with our second show that night at around 11 o'clock at the House of Blues. And then I'll have a show Monday night after Raw. It should be, I guess, one of the last big events of the entire weekend, because a lot of folks, fly home on Tuesday. So our show will be after Raw, and so we can talk about everything in the Q&As, Raw, WrestleMania, Access, all the other events people saw, the whole 9 yards. So, and tickets are on sale at Ticketmaster.com. I'm not going to be like a lot of guys. So you got to get them today, man. They're going to run out. I'll tell you that the houses, there are a few hundred tickets left for all three shows combined. So there are tickets left. They're getting scarce, but there are tickets left. I would suggest if you want to come see us, which I hope you do, you hop on Ticketmaster and get your tickets and not have any issues with it. They start at $20. I think they're fan friendly. They're booked around other events. I think all that's going to work. We have the best venue in town to come see an event. House of Blues is great. I'll have a different guest at every show. I think fans are going to like my guests. And it's funny, we talked earlier about surprises. I got people literally begging me on Twitter to give them hints on who's coming as my guest. They don't want to be surprised. They want hints. And I want to say, like, what are you, 8? You want a hint. So I don't give them any hints, but all the guests are going to be good, and the shows will be really entertaining, and the Q&As will be different. Every show will be different, so it'll be fun. So there's that. I'm on Twitter at JRSBBQ. If you're listening in the United States, you can get our products at Ingles grocery stores throughout the Southeast. That's a 200-and-something store grocery chain that now carries all of our products. And, of course, we still do a lot of online business with WWE Shop, and they sell and ship our products every day. Business has been really good. And they'll have it again this year at the Superstore at Access, and I'll have some products and some. I'll have my own gimmick table. I'm actually going to have a gimmick table at the House of Blues. So it's going to be a fun weekend. I hope folks will make time to come by and see us and have a beer and a burger and have some fun and hear some good stories, some funny stuff, and enjoy yourself. So that's what I'm doing. I'm working on a book. The book has come along well, but, man, it is a labor of love, and I'm hanging on every word, every sentence, every damn paragraph. So I'm hoping it's going to be done this year, but I ain't going to lay any big odds on that one. It's become a bigger project, and I've become very, very I'm very much a pain in the ass with my writing partners because I want every factual piece of information in there exactly accurate. And so it's just taking a little longer to do fact-checking and historical information and this type of stuff. So it's all good, though, man. It's good. I got some big announcements coming up soon. I may be getting back into the boxing game. That looks like there's something that could happen, and then the working with Flitz because we're going to flip that app to be called the Fight FITE TV network, and that's going to be really a fun deal. So hey, anybody that's listening, you guys included, if you like boxing, wrestling, arm wrestling, kickboxing, Muay Thai, MMA, traditional MMA, this app is free. And if you got a smart TV and you got Wi-Fi, you are in the game. FITE television. Good stuff.
Perfect.
So it's all good, man. Life is good. I'm busier than I thought I would be, but I've gotten some new projects on the horizon, and I was just looking at what was I watching here? I just got through watching a Super Juniors tournament show. One of my shows I'm doing. So I'm going through and watching a little bit of the cuts of the show, and so I can make sure I want to make sure I can identify everybody. I'm not worried about calling the holes or the story, but I don't want to misname anybody inadvertently, because that would be hideous, and I would never forgive myself. So I'm trying to. Here's an Oklahoma guy trying to understand how to figure out how to enunciate these Japanese names. So it's challenging. They don't exactly roll off your tongue the first.
That's worth the price of admission on its own. Well, another huge thank you to Jim Ross. We really appreciate the time. Good luck moving forward, sir.
Okay, guys. Thanks a lot. I appreciate your professionalism. Take care.